Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's PropMoto webinar. My name is Franco. I'm the editor and co-founder of PropMoto, and as always, like it or not, I'll be your host for this one. Excited to chat a little bit about multifamily, right? Multifamily market, the technology that's kind of helping all of these operators deal with what has been a bit of a difficult market. Multifamily's had a great run in the last, let's say, 6, 7 years, right? Post-pandemic. And I think there are lots of signs that are showing that it's slowing down. Obviously, certain markets are doing better than others, but there's supply that's getting built every day and putting some downward pressure on rent prices. And just the economic reality of the country right now, I think, is causing a lot of people to pull back on what they're paying and look at things and tighten the bootstraps a little bit just to make sure that they can get by. Uncertainty, I think, is largely dealing a blow to that as well, because with the way that things are run right now in the government, it's a lot of uncertainty around. So we're going to talk a little bit about the market. Then we're going to talk about how, again, these companies are able to really deal with that and use technology in particular to help automate tasks, become more efficient, and hopefully be more profitable. As always, this is a live event. Anything can happen. And I'm not saving time at the end for the questions. I would be happy for you to just ask the questions as they come. So if you have something to say, go ahead and jump in the Q&A here. Ask any of our panelists whatever you want. And if they're pertinent and intelligent, happy to field them right as they come. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. And let's go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to introduce Lee Miller. He's Vice President of Multifamily at Brivo. Hi, Lee.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, he's joining us from Portugal. So thanks for coming all the way across the pond to stream in here.
Absolutely.
Next, we have Todd Kerr. He's Director of Client Services at a little organization called Greystar. I think you guys are the biggest multifamily owner in the country now, right?
Yes, we are. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you.
Yes. Over 1 million units now.
Yeah, and
Great.
last million units, that is unfathomable, but congratulations. And last but not least, we have David Shaw. He's President and COO at Lively. Hi, David.
Hi, super excited to be here. Thanks for including me.
Yeah, of course. So first, I like to start these off with a little state of the market. What's going on out there? What are you guys seeing? Obviously, we know the numbers that have come in, right? Rent growth stalling, going down in certain markets. But maybe just talk to me about the outlook, right? When you're talking to, Lee and David, your clients, or Todd, when you guys are having your economists and teams of, intelligent people look at the kind of future trend lines, what are you guys seeing as far as multifamily and maybe we don't have to go market by market because I don't think we have time for that, but maybe talk to me class by class, right? Because I know that we have seen some differentiation between the brand new luxury class A's and maybe some of the lower ones. So Todd, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, great. Thank you. For the A class, I primarily oversee A class project with Greystar. This year has been an interesting year. It's been a flat year, and in many cases where I'm located in Southern California, we've actually seen negative rent growth. So it's been a kind of an up and down year here, and it's been very inconsistent. We started the year off actually not bad for Q1. And then as we got into the spring and early spring, early summer months, it kind of really dropped off here. So it was just really quiet, not a lot of traffic, ATR spiked, occupancy spiked. And then in the summer months, we thought it would pick up a little bit, where we did not see the pickup we anticipated here in SoCal. And we've kind of ridden it out this year. And for the most part, the A-class products in SoCal, we've been in the low 90s, even high 80s. It's been tough getting over that 90 mark in some cases. And it's usually an area through the summer and late summer into the fall, right before fourth quarter, we're solid 92, 93, 94, in some cases 95. This year's been in the low 90s, and we've just been struggling. We've also seen the A-class product have much higher concessions, anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks plus. We're seeing in some cases today up to 3 months free in some cases. So it's not really getting any better as we go into the fourth quarter. Luckily, it has not slowed down as much as we sometimes see it in Q4, so that is hopeful, but we'll see how we end the year here.
Todd, was there any like event or something that could really peg that drop off to in the kind of spring?
Nothing that we could really peg it to. It was interesting because the winter was not bad, and we anticipated the spring to just kind of start picking up, and it felt like the winter during the spring. So we do not know why that was like that, but as we move into summer, it did pick back up again, but not to the levels we're used to seeing here in SoCal. We're used to seeing, anywhere from 20 to 40 apartments absorbed per month during those months, where it was just 18 to 20, 22, 24 maybe. So yeah, interesting trend for sure.
David, what about you? What are you hearing from your clients?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're seeing multifamily almost start to approach a singularity, right? And so Class A, Class B, there's this consolidation or this shift, and it's sort of like values shifting back and forth, down from A, up from B. And, given the nature of our platform, we have conversations with technology leaders just as often as we have conversations with operators. And we're really hearing two main themes. Centralization, right? I would say that that's the piece that is starting to shift from Class A down into Class B asset properties. And they're realizing, the value of centralized operations. It's no longer for the large enterprise institutional players. And then the other piece that we're hearing that's starting to kind of shift more from what is traditionally a Class B approach of a human-centric tech, right? So with all of the conversation around automation, the talk track is really shifting towards like automation should amplify people, not replace them. And I'm hearing a lot more of the traditional enterprise and institutional players talking about nurturing the talent and creating space and opportunity for the people that they've hired to do the unique things that the people were hired to do. And automation is expected to augment and support that initiative. And so just really seeing this like interesting convergence point where asset class is becoming less of an influence in decision making because every owner and operator seems to be trying to accomplish the same end experience for their teams and for their residents.
Yeah, I've certainly heard that. Expectations are up, right, for all residents. It doesn't matter if you don't live in a luxury, high rise, you still expect, smooth operations, right? Be able to get in the door easily, all of those things. So I think there's a good point. And, your centralization comment was really great. We actually had an entire webinar about this a few weeks ago, if anyone wants to go look that one up. But I do want to table that for a second here and just talk about it. I think before the centralization idea was really wrapped up in, companies like Greystar, right, that have enough buildings in a certain area that they can, easily have kind of a, one little office that can do everything. But I think now, particularly since a lot of operators are looking at other markets, right? If you are in a bad market, maybe you're looking at, a Pittsburgh or, a Detroit right now to kind of help. It seems like that centralization is still able to be applied, right? Even when you have these properties that are geographically so far apart. Is that what you're seeing, David? Is the centralization being kind of like able to spread a little farther than just maybe, one city to another?
Absolutely. I think, in the post-pandemic landscape, the nature of work and the tools and the systems available have made centralization less reliant on geographic density. And it's more about the type and the style of work or tasks that need to be done. And I also think that's shifting the definition of centralization, right? It's no longer just about pulling everything into one system. It's about having, the right data at the right moment for the right decision. And I think as the industry is shifting that definition of what centralization means to truly deliver value, they're looking at it more from that perspective rather than just a conglomeration of tasks or service calls within a geographic region.
One of the interesting points that I've heard from my interviews is, from the inception of prop tech until very recently, it was all about the kind of who owns that system of record, right? Everybody was battling, the Yardies, the MRIs. Everybody wanted to be the system of record. And now with AI, like you're not so tied to that, right? And if some of these buildings are owned by multiple entities, you don't really have an ability to change your system of record, right? But you have this assistant who can jump into every system of record, double check everything, put everything in, and it just, I think, has really started a shift in the kind of prop tech industry, where now you're seeing everyone kind of scrambling to provide better service, right, and not just kind of lock everyone in as like, well, you're on our system now, so here you go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The number of comments that I've heard from owners and operators that are essentially just like, why can't my tech partners just all work together? Why can't you just get together and figure it out so that, there isn't the friction of, the Yardies or the big enterprise players. They really want an overall unified experience.
Yeah, it's certainly better for the end user, right? But harder to maybe raise money when you're and you don't have everybody locked in customers. So
Yep.
Lee, what are you seeing with all of this, and what do you think are some of the kind of particular headwinds that are in the multifamily space right now?
I think folks be more strategic, right? I think, kind of we went through this boom and people were buying up land everywhere. And it was like, okay, we'll buy, a couple parcels in Austin, we'll buy some in Dallas, and, you start spreading outside of the state. And now I see it's at least in Austin, the folks have two or three properties. They may not be building another one, but they're looking to acquire. There may be somebody that built one property in Austin, and they may be saying, okay, well, this is strategically a nightmare for us to manage this one property that's away from kind of our home base. They may have reached out there and kind of the boom and said, okay, we're going to buy this, and this is place to be. And now and then I find strategically that having a team in Austin and you're based in California is a lot harder to manage. So they are looking to offload some of these properties, and the local folks are saying, okay, I have three or four properties in this part of Austin. I'll acquire that one. And then it goes back to that centralization piece, right? Because they're managing those four properties, they're successful. So adding another property to that. So we are seeing acquisitions in the space. We're seeing a lot of acquisitions and then kind of value add. So I think that's kind of stepped up in the last 12 months in terms of us going in with these folks and looking at the technology. I think, like I said, they're being strategic about it. They're getting good prices, and they're acquiring these. And the last thing I think is that we're seeing places adopt technology that we hadn't before. Before it was a lot of like what we call the NFL cities, the bigger cities. And of late, we're seeing folks move money into the Midwest. The Kansas Cities are blowing up, the Indianapolises, places like that. And they're also adopting technology just because now they've learned from everybody else. I think what the most interesting part is that we go into these meetings and they're almost ashamed that, oh, well, we haven't adopted technology. And I turn around and say, actually, it's a good thing. Everybody else has done this in these large cities, and everybody's gone through the pain points. And over the last 5 years, kind of, those who are left are doing really well, and, they're mature products. So you're actually at an advantage. Everybody else, in LA and, Dallas and, those sorts of places kind of experience the pain of all these startups and all these different companies coming in and doing it a different way. But now the folks that are late adopters to it actually are at an advantage because they actually have the proof, and we all have our case studies and kind of the business behind us that, hey, we've been doing this for a long time. Now you can provide it. So it is interesting that those folks are having an easier time with that centralization piece for sure.
Yeah, I feel like all this technology too has kind of opened the aperture of the acquisitions, right? Not only can you easily kind of bring in a piece of your portfolio that is maybe in a city you've never even considered before, but also smaller buildings. I know, quote unquote, smart money would always kind of look for the buildings large enough to have on-site leasing teams, right? On-site management and maintenance teams. But if you are able to kind of bolt together a portfolio of smaller buildings, now you can go in, find these probably better deals. Some of them are some value add deals, like you were saying, Lee, where you're taking maybe an unsophisticated operator out and, making it a lot more sophisticated. Todd, do you guys have like a litmus test on how big of a building, and how many units is kind of your, ground you won't go under?
Yeah, it's not a size necessarily, it's an income thing, but typically anything under 100 units, probably more like 75, under
Okay.
75 just isn't going to work in our model. We have minimums and minimum fees that just don't pencil. So probably around anything under 75 typically does not, unless it's a super high-end community in a location like Beverly Hills or LA that just achieves incredible rents.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about what you brought up, Lee, right? Which is people adopting technology in a lot kind of broader sense, right? And I think, originally it was there's always this calculation, right? Is do you build something kind of custom? Do you buy something off the shelf? Do you kind of maybe partner with a startup and they can kind of help you massage it to where it needs to be to kind of really fit into your processes? I mean, what are you guys seeing as far as how operators are bringing the technology in, particularly ones that maybe wouldn't have been able to kind of build on their own, right? I think some of the companies are big enough to have a dev team that can do that, but they can't all. David, I'll start with you on this one. What are you seeing when it comes to like that adoption, and which path are some of these operators choosing to scale it up?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think respectfully, there are few organizations that can be successful with a build first approach. Having been in this industry since 2017, I've heard all the way back then, the intent to build something in-house, and we're sitting here now almost in 2026, and they still don't have a product to market, right? It's a different skill set and not always the wheelhouse. And so I think there's few companies that can successfully deliver their own in-house tech stack. So then we're seeing the rest of the market, and I think it's pretty balanced to partnering or buying solutions off the shelf. I think more so of what we're seeing speaks to your earlier point of not wanting to be confined into a single tech stack. I think that was sort of the bridge state where you'd find a provider that had a unified tech stack or a bundle of solutions, and you would take that and cram it into your portfolio. And you don't really get efficiency from that, right? Efficiency is really about interoperability and not one system that rules everything. And so I think that's really driving the buying decisions of how do I create true ROI, or how do I create true efficiency in my tech stack? And it's about creating seamless transitions between the systems and the work that needs to be done. And taking an open market capitalism approach of, even within your portfolio, one property might benefit from a different tech stack than the other. And so having the ability to kind of take a la carte and pick the systems or the providers that work best for that budget, for that experience, for that demographic, the most important thing then becomes the ability for those systems to actually communicate to one another rather than it being under a single umbrella or within a confined tech stack. The other piece that's driving that with, I don't want to jump too far ahead into the conversation here, but as we talk about automation, people are realizing that like the fuel of true intelligent automation is the data that it sits on top of. And they're realizing that when they're confined to a single silo, you're only getting a keyhole perspective of the data that your property and your residents and your teams are sitting on top of. And so more and more owners and operators that we're talking with are recognizing the importance of having a broad but unified data set that their systems can sit on top of, and can do the depth of analysis and intelligent automations. And that really comes from a connected but diversified system of solutions.
Lee, I'm interested in your opinion here? I mean, I know you guys are kind of forced to play nice with everyone, right? Your access control, you can't exactly like, lock people into any system. Some people just have legacy systems that are, really expensive to tear out. How do you see your clients kind of scaling up, adding new capabilities? And is there still some kind of dev work to be done to get people to where they, these systems perform like they want them to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like you said, we have to be open to everybody, right? So we have an open API. We work even with friendly competitors. There's people that we integrate with that do the exact same thing. We do the exact same thing as them. And, it's really a mixed bag. That flexibility though means that, really we're never saying no. And also it's future proofed, right? So we want to say that we have a robust system throughout the country. You can't rinse and repeat the same. As much as, developers would love to use the same tech stack across the entire country, you can't do it based on even just local jurisdiction. California is going to require different locks. You have different needs in New York City versus the rest of the country. So our approach is that we have a robust system, and each site is really looked at individually when it comes to the locks and how we're using it. Student first, class A, class B, really credentials as well, right? So just being able to go in and say, here's a book of credentials, what would you like to use? So that flexibility is priority for us. And then flexibility on the third-party softwares, right? So we're integrated directly with Lively. We have customers out there that absolutely love the Lively experience and they absolutely love Brevo. Well, great, we bring that experience together for them and they have the best of both worlds. So I really think that that interoperability is key. I think you're seeing some closed ecosystems within in the past. Either they're on-prem systems or they were newer, and when they struggle, you're still stuck with that hardware, right? So having that interoperability, working with the different lock manufacturers is key for us. Just because that flexibility is there, right? So I think that's key, and then also all the other third-party softwares that come into it, self-guided tours, parking management. Us at Brevo, we want to be the hardware. We want to secure the building. Our main priority is securing the residents, the staff, and any guests. We're not going to get into some of that resident experience, self-guided tours, rent payments, those sorts of things. So it's having that flexibility and not closing off your ecosystem, because really, if you do that, you're closing off a large portion of the market.
Yeah, and the future proofing aspect, right, is really interesting. I'm sure it makes your sales process a lot easier. I mean, not every company's around forever. I mean, even like Google, they sunsetted a lot of their kind of smart home gadgetry, right? If you would have hardwired all that in, you might be a little salty about, not having to replace it all.
We absolutely love it when, our customers bring new technologies to us. I go to OpTech and, OpTech's, in my opinion, is too short. You end up being a day of meetings and you don't see the other technologies out there. So when we go into a meeting with a customer and they're saying, "Oh, we really like this software," it's great for us because when we meet with that company, they become a partner. They may be doing something that assists Lively. So us having that open communication with our partners is key because it's really the best customer experience.
Yeah. I got a question I'd like to field right now with you guys. It says, integrations are key. Do you see a trend towards building an open network rather than a pay-to-play scenario that the major PMS companies have today, more like a Salesforce partner community? I'll stick with you on this one, Lee. What do you think about that?
We would love that. I mean, it is a pay to play, right? So they hit that on the head. I think at least for Derm David's, in my perspective, there's a big check at the end of the year that we pay to all those providers. That's the problem, is that folks look at us and say, okay, well, these are your per door costs. These are, but it's those costs from the PMS that have to go somewhere before we even start to support the products that we're putting out there. Yes, we wish it was a more open, but when you have the kind of the big four in the space and they have as many units as they have, it is sort of pay to play. If not, you can't give that end-to-end experience. I think with us, I mean, I know Lively, we don't charge Lively. Lively doesn't charge us anything. It essentially starts with the PMS, and kind of the rest of us play nicely on the back end of it. But yeah, in terms of playing with those folks, it is more difficult than playing with the partners like Lively.
David, what do you think? I'm sure you've had to navigate this pay to play.
Absolutely. To directly answer the question, no, I don't believe we're headed towards that open marketplace sort of evolution, but it's a sentiment that I'm hearing time and time again from owner and operator customers um, of finding a landscape that can be more open, can be more agnostic, allows for more of the flexibility that Lee is speaking to. And we have some customers that have done some really creative things around their PMS system so that they're not tied into the big four. They're repurposing Salesforce or they're building their own PMS systems in-house, that are lightweight but sufficient for the volume of residents or properties that they're supporting. And because they want to try and explore that approach, they want to try and drive that approach. And so I think there's a growing sentiment on the customer side for that future, but I'm seeing actually a stronger shift towards the pay-to-play approach from the PMS partners.
I will say, somewhat anecdotally, I get invited to all of these user conferences, and a lot of these companies are trying to mirror at least the kind of the Dreamforce event that Salesforce puts on every year, right? Where they have the booths and all the partners, and it definitely feels very, like this kind of network of partners. And come to find out, most of those are paying for those booths, right? So again, it is a pay to play scenario, but I do think that at least the intention in the space has this idea of kind of having this big network that everybody can kind of build off of. It's just, I'm not sure if they've found ways to keep the revenue that they want. Right.
If we participated in every, PMS Dreamforce style event, that, would be a $100,000 marketing expense for us.
It'd be your whole marketing budget probably.
Just to have a booth in
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
Yeah, Todd, what do you guys? I mean, I'm sure this isn't like come down to the actual building management, but when you look at like which systems to implement, is there some thought of, okay, who are their partners? How well are they going to play with our other kind of networks and other systems?
Yeah, no, absolutely. For our stacks, there's not a ton of flexibility with Greystar. We just were at a conference last week and they said, listen, this is our stack. We want to keep this our stack, and there's some opportunity for ownerships to bring in their own systems and platforms at times, but there's just not a ton of flexibility with Greystar in our PMS stack and what we have from an operations standpoint. So it's a little different from our end, I think.
And it's interesting because I think that, can actually probably push the industry forward a bit, right? That you now have a shift of power between, the Yardys of the world saying, hey, if you want to be on Yardy, or now you have a huge client saying, hey, do you want us to really go to another, another system just because you can't play nice with, this or that other that we need to have in our tech stack? I think that's a really interesting point here that, as
it's Yardy or RealPage for us. It's just, that's it.
Yeah, one or the other, but
It'd be interesting from Todd's side. David and I look at it from the Lively and Brevo and a couple other players that play in our space on the same property, but how many actual softwares are pulling from those PMS on a daily basis, right? So like, I think just on the access and self-guided tours, there's probably 3 or 4 per property, but then you get into all the other things that David's teams manage. I'm guessing it's upwards of 10 people paying that PMS to have access to that system. And for the most part, it's pretty light. It's not that we're getting anything amazing from them. It's essentially, we're just pulling that rent roll through. We're getting that, name, phone number, email, and then we're being notified when they move out. So you got maybe, anywhere from 5 to 10 softwares that are paying per site to pull that information out. So it's, it'd be great for all of us if we could open that ecosystem up for sure.
Got another question come in. I'll throw this at you guys. Larger platforms like Yardi are expanding their ecosystems, moving beyond building management to controls to include financial models, sustainability features. you think this makes it significantly harder for smaller, more specialized platforms that focus on a single module to stay competitive? What strategies could keep these smaller players used to remain relevant in the market? David, what do you think? I mean, I think, I will say that best in class, right? People also still talk about that, right? You maybe want to have all the best in class things. So, but do you think there is that kind of one system that will rule them all, or do you think there'll always be an ability to have new entrants come in and have a place?
Yeah, I think there will always be space for it, right? We're talking about I don't know, what, a 35 million unit total addressable market. I think the big thing, and Lee touched on this a little bit earlier, or alluded to it, really comes down to sort of like a philosophical mindset, right? There's going to be half of the market that is going to choose good enough for the convenience of having, a single, uh, pardon my language, but throat to choke or a single failure point if a system breaks down or the experience isn't what's expected and it just becomes easier to manage. And there's going to be half the market that wants the freedom of choice and wants the unique value differentiators that a more targeted point solution can offer outside of the enterprise players, right? It's really, about how deep versus how wide you want to go across the functionality. And as long as, the market continues to evolve and as long as, companies like Lively or Brevo or the partners that we work with continue to innovate and understand the direction of where the market is going, I think there will always be a space for that value because it's the bread and butter of what we do, right? It's our core value proposition, and being able to get 100% of that is going to be valuable to a large segment of the market rather than 20% of it across a vertically integrated or compounded tech stack. So I think the space will be there. The other thing that I'll say is I'm seeing more and more, and even looking at, the OpTech attendee list coming up here in a couple weeks, um, a lot of new titles coming into the industry, which just tells me that the the market is realizing that there needs to be subject matter expertise. There's nuance into the solutions, right? I'm seeing directors of AI titles, director of technology and automation titles coming in. So I think as more and more owners and operators appreciate the value of what this technology burst that we're in right now creates to operational efficiency, there's going to be the people in the room that are asking the right questions and know how to dive deep enough into what the tech stack offers that will still create plenty of space and value for our point solutions to offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I personally believe that AI, with its ability to kind of automate integrating, and that will democratize things in a way, right, where you can't just kind of have.
Yeah, Lee alluded to another point in the earlier question, like security and convenience don't have to compete, right? The best in class solution and AI and automation is just going to drive that, right? Like it becomes less critical of trading off experience or performance for the value of convenience because the system should be able to just all talk to one another. It shouldn't matter what the systems are that you put in. And so that convenient value proposition will be carrying less and less weight over the next 1 to 3 years.
Interesting. Anything to add to that, Lee?
I think it really comes down to support, right? You see all these companies that want to do everything and want to be everything to everybody. But what I'd say is, somebody calling into a support center that can't pay their rent is completely different than somebody calling into a support center that can't open their door to their unit or can't get into a building. And I think that's where a lot of these companies, they rather than staying in kind of their lane of what they do well, they start to diverse into these other areas. But then it really comes down to the support, and that's really where the customer, delivering the tech, installing it. If you have a good, labor force is one thing, but it's 6 months later when it's coming down to supporting that software. If that software is completely different than what your kind of bread and butter is, I think that's when it becomes an issue, right? So like at Brevo, we pride ourselves on access control and video and securing that site. then David and his team are then go doing that resident experience, or the PMS and Trada Yardi, whoever it is, we rely on them for that resident experience. We know those locks inside and out, and coming from the enterprise space and being in this space 25 years, we know the nuances of locks and readers, and building loses power and internet goes down. There's completely different nuances than somebody who can't create a maintenance ticket or can't pay their rent, those sorts of things. I really think that anybody looking to adopt new technology really needs to look at what that support is. When is it available, first of all, and is it dedicated to support to that product? Because one isn't able to support the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and as the technology gets more advanced, right, there's more nuances, right? The expectations go up. It's not just, oh, I want to kind of have a general, go to frequently asked questions page, right? It's like, no, they need to know this particular piece of information to solve this problem right now.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is, kind of when this whole integration of, access control and unit locks first came out, it was really reliant on the phone going out to the cloud. Then all of a sudden, that's actually not acceptable anymore, because the way these buildings are being built, cellular connectivity isn't always in every part of these buildings, right? So,
Mhm.
from the access control side, we all had to step up our game. And coming from the enterprise side, our philosophy is, our support team shouldn't be asking, well, do you have cellular connectivity? If we offer a mobile app, that mobile app should work all times. And I think that's where the differentiating between, these different companies out there, and, somebody that's not used to working in the space, they're not going to be asking the question, oh, well, do you have cellular connectivity? Those sorts of things. And there's a big difference between doing a light integration and doing a deep integration, right? We kind of look at it as light versus like an enterprise level solution. And I think that's a big piece of when you're supporting it. It's just a different level of complexity.
Mm-hmm. I want to get into the meat of this,
Yep.
conversation, which is automation. But I do have one more question that I think is great. I want to field right now, which is, are you finding it hard to find integrators, installers to execute these highly connected systems, both on the hardware and software side? Todd, I'm not sure how involved you are
Yeah,
on
and
that
I'm not
part of
really
it.
involved with that side. That's probably a better question for David and Lee.
Yeah, and Lee, I know you guys need like installers, right? So
I think we have the same problem as Todd, right? Talking to property managers is finding the labor,
Yeah.
labor prices are going up.
skilled labor,
Unfortunately,
particularly,
yes,
right?
exactly. As a country, we're not pushing, it's not glamorous to do skilled labor anymore. And, we see it on the installer side all the time, right? We have 3,100 dealers across the US, but they're fighting over installers and programmers because there's just not enough out there. We're not doing a good job, um, as an industry push, I would say that was our, as access control industry, that's the number one issue right now. The technology's there, the AI is coming, but it's finding the workforce to go and do it. And our CEO, Steve Van Til, said it the best. He said, our industry is not going anywhere. We're not being replaced by AI. You're still having to hang door locks on units. You're
Mhm.
still having to install these things. The problem is that we don't have the labor force to do that. So, I think as a company, that's what we're pushing, is to get more people trained up, or help our dealers in terms of training and resources for them to bring on more staff, because we can install everything that we want to, but if there's nobody there to install it, then we're all in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's get into the actual automation piece of this, right? And I'm kind of going to go, vertical by vertical, and talk about, what can be done, how it is maybe best done. I think the most kind of biggest line item is likely management, right? You have people that make a lot of money to manage these properties. A lot of times, I've heard, again, that last webinar we did about centralization, the Elevate, the KKRs, they did a study that showed that their managers were just inundated with small tasks, right? They couldn't do any of their actual kind of management because it was just so many like little things, timesheets, all these kind of things they have to do, right? And so, is automation able to kind of be that little busy worker that can pull these together? Todd, I want to start with you on this. Like, how do you kind of empower your management to not have to just be spinning their wheels on every little day-to-day thing that comes up?
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard. Automation equates to time. We're a people company. People are our first pillar, and Greystar is working through a lot of workflows and removing boundaries for our people. We have teams that are looking into reducing uh, processes from 20 steps to 10 steps. So again, the little tasks are very important, but if we can find automation and ways to reduce those steps to save time for our people so our people can be client facing and in front of the customers and our clients, that's what our Greystar is trying to do right now. And so it's a big push for Greystar to find automation that does help reduce the steps in a lot of our processes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Lee, how about you? When, management often doesn't do security, right? But all of those little calls, that they get, I'm sure can like, how do you see people kind of automating their management teams to help them, do a better job?
It's like Todd said, it's a lot of the small stuff, right? So let's just take the most, we talk about the most simple things that happen on a daily basis. Some of these properties that we're working on, they're 1,500 units spread across 2 floors. They got some serious acreage. And what happens when a maintenance person's at one corner and the office is on the other corner and they got a maintenance call. Now they have to walk back to the office all the way across, the campus, get a key, and then go back to the unit, that may be 3 units down, from where they were to start. So just removing little things like that, like Todd said, those mundane things that site teams shouldn't be dealing with, right? So if a maintenance person gets new maintenance ticket, it should automatically show up on their phone, and they should have access to go and access that unit to serve that resident. And I think that's really, removing, the management of delivery drivers. I went out and visited one of our sites last week, and I said, "What's your number one problem?" They're like, "Delivery drivers." They got a really beautiful package solution, working with us, and they can't get the delivery drivers to even get the packages in a room, let alone go in and check them in via the package delivery system. So, it's supposed to be all automated. The UPS or Amazon scan it, and then, resident automatically gets a code, and that code gives them access into the package room. Well, the packages are sitting out there. They got a notification from Amazon that it's there, and they get there and it's just packages stacked up outside the room. Staff is then having to do the job of the delivery drivers, right? So it's just removing those little things, making that access easy, making sure that, we don't have those delivery drivers stuck outside the doors, those sorts of things. But I agree with Todd. Like, let's focus on the little things before we start, wanting to conquer the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And using different platforms too. Like, for example, our team spends so much time on finding market information and data on our competitors. A platform, Hello Data, is a platform that we use often now. Something that would be a couple-hour task or a half a day Monday task to do. You can type in your competitive set within the system and it spits it out within 30 seconds. All the information you need, all the data points it is found online, and it's those type of platforms have reduced some of our time and that we spend doing these small tasks, which is important. Again, it's all comes back to our customer. We're a customer based company as well, where we are focused on our customers and always want to be in front of our customers to help them. So finding that time is not easy.
Sure. From what I've seen too, in my mind, it's like there's a triage aspect of AI that is really helpful. I think all of these verticals have had technologies for a while now to make them more efficient. But you look at the chatbots of the world, right? Even if it's you're calling in, they can kind of figure out what the issue is, who to push it to in a way that, that's what management used to have to do, right? It's like, okay, let's send this ticket to maintenance. They need, leaky toilet. Where now it's like, the ticket just goes to maintenance, right? They don't even have to.
Goes right to maintenance.
Yeah.
There's even ones after our calls that can determine whether it is an actual emergency or not an emergency, and saving a lot of maintenance overtime attending to calls that are not really emergency calls that they go out to anyways. And so there's some payroll savings there as well, which is great to hear, obviously.
What color is the water on your floor?
Exactly. Do you have 2 bathrooms or 1 bathroom?
Yeah, right. Like, can you wait till the morning? Like, you'll be okay.
Yeah. Is it 100 degrees or is it 70 degrees outside?
Great point. Yeah.
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 Let's stick with maintenance because I think that's another kind of really obvious piece here, right? Is how to kind of automate not only an on-site maintenance team, but all of the contractors that need to get in and out of a building on any given day, right? How much just hard that can be. Obviously there's less keys now, but you used to have millions of keys and have to kind of figure out where to go, who to be, who to let in. There's a obviously security aspect to it as well, making sure people are qualified and getting to where they need to be. What do you think is kind of the best low-hanging fruit to automate as far as maintenance goes? David, do you have anything on this?
Yeah. So we believe that staff access should be smart, secure, and simple. And it should be driven by the data that access automation can sit on top of, right? And we feel that if, for example, maintenance access is built on top of clean, normalized, unified data, that checks all the boxes, right? The right person gets the right access to the right unit at the right time. And the ability to shift from a practice of master keys or coming from the 7th floor back to the desk, up to the 13th floor, back to the desk, swapping in and out of fobs um, for not having the right information or the right tools or the right things needed to complete the ticket. All of those things can be solved by intelligent maintenance data that can power access, right? At Lively, we've seen since we introduced our AI maintenance tool, I'll start from the beginning, just going from the legacy maintenance systems to Lively's maintenance system, we saw an average of 2.1 day improvement in maintenance ticket resolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Simply because the unified dashboard of the property manager experience, they have the visibility. They see the tickets that are open. They see how long they've been open. They're hearing from the residents in real time on checkups. And so even just that behavioral guardrail reduced ticket time. And then when we introduced the AI element to our maintenance tool suite, we saw an additional 1.3 day improvement to maintenance ticket because, to Todd's point, it's prioritizing the critical tickets, but it's also creating complete and robust maintenance information so that the team has the right part, the right tool, the permission to enter, all of the things that they need to go and solve that ticket on the first visit, rather than discovering additional problems or having incomplete data to work off of that's causing return or repeat visits. And so I think maintenance is an area that we've really leaned heavily into automation around the data intake, access control, those pieces, because it's ripe for that sort of automated disruption.
Sure. I'm always surprised too of the operators I talk to is, maintenance seems to be one of the main ways that you can really turn someone against your property, right? Like they'll put up with a lot, but if you have a maintenance ticket that stretches too long or a bad maintenance experience, like get ready for some bad Google reviews coming on your property and likely a they're not going to re-up the lease.
Yeah.
So
Well, and within our maintenance suite, as soon as that ticket is marked as complete, the resident's getting prompted to submit feedback on that specific maintenance ticket, and the property manager is being notified in real time with clear direction on how to follow up. And
yeah,
so
make sure that
exactly helps resolve or mitigate those sentiment issues.
Todd, how do you guys deal? I mean, I'm sure you guys get a ton of maintenance requests and probably treat it very seriously. How do you try to
Yeah,
automate this and make it a
absolutely.
process?
And automating it is fantastic. And again, to the opposite of what you said, if you were not responding or something goes unchecked, people are upset, but these maintenance people are the face of the properties typically, the one person on staff or people on staff where residents are have contact with and see throughout the property and on the property in their homes. A lot of times these residents aren't even coming into the office anymore because they're doing things from the resident app. So having things automated and making sure that these things get done timely, done correctly is a huge piece of the retention piece of our business. And retention right now in today's economy with occupancy where it is an important piece for sure.
Lee, do you have anything to add to that? I'm sure you guys deal with the maintenance a lot, but just probably on the obviously access side of it.
Yeah, I think, outside of like the property management team, it's also the third party, right? So you have the same plumbers and electricians and painters coming to manage those vacant units on a weekly basis. What our customers are saying, it's an average about 30 minutes a day is wasted waiting, they show up on site, they're waiting 15, 20 minutes for the maintenance team or property manager to show up with the keys for whatever units they're working on. At the end of the day, when they're finished, that they're looking for somebody to drop those keys off and sign them back in, right? So, what we've done is automated that with our customers to say, if you're using the same painters and the same electricians on a weekly basis, then just give them a key, through their mobile app. They get into the property, get into the units. Now they're saving anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes a day, just not, just doing those key handoffs, right? So
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, I want to switch gears here to leasing. I think this is another really interesting, vertical that a lot of automation can help, right? You have people that have a very specific job, but obviously spend a lot of their time, I think, dealing with pretty, simple questions, right? How big are the units? Stuff that is likely on the website, but you still have to kind of bring people to the top of the funnel. How do you think this automation can help leasing? And I guess a bigger question is like, do we still need on-site leasing teams, right? Or, are they as critical as before? Todd, I see you smiling. I'm interested in your comments here.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the asset and if how large the asset is and if it's an AA plus property or a B property. I was at a conference, Appfolio conference, a few weeks ago, and they were talking about how they have all centralized services. They don't have anyone on site. They do all their leasing by appointment. They do have self-guided tours. I forget the name of the platform, but self-guided tours where people can tour themselves and it's all automated. That doesn't necessarily work in my world where we're from. People will always be a very important piece of the business for Greystar and Greystar customers. I'm on the third party side, so third party management and the ownerships we deal with, they want us to be customer facing and in front of the customers. That said, though, there's technologies that does help, you know, uh, make their processes and the day-to-day tasks that they do much easier and more efficient. So again, we are going to always be customer facing. We'll be doing things a little bit more efficiently, but being in front of the customers is incredibly important for Greystar.
Yeah, I hear, and I think this is, kind of this idea of, you're not replacing the humans, you're really just kind of giving them more powers, right? I think having a leasing agent walk a prospect through, right, have the connection, follow up in a personalized way is obviously going to sell, lease units out better than anything else, right? But
Absolutely.
some people, just want to come in after hours, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe just don't want to deal with it, and they're just kind of want to poke their heads in. So they could certainly benefit from the
Yeah.
self-guided tours.
And you're absolutely right. Each customer is very different. Some may want to take the tour 24 and do it on their own, and some people want to be, in front of people. And also, it depends on the age of the prospect and resident. Age does make a difference.
Sure.
Your older demographic wants that personal contact. Your younger demographics tends to want to do everything on their own and not necessarily have that FaceTime. So.
Yeah. Lee, you have anything to add? I know you guys deal with self-guided tours and the security aspect of all of that.
I completely agree with Todd. I love all our property managers out there, and I think they bring the value to the property. I think the big thing is that, if somebody, it really comes down to the region, right? Somewhere in the city, New York, you may, I lived in London, and there's a poor leasing agent walking us around units at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, because by the time we finish work, that's when we're available. So I think, it has its place. You don't want a property manager sitting there for 2 hours after hours waiting to walk one person through. So if somebody wants to view that property at 8 o'clock, then great. That's, your tour 24s, those sorts of folks. But I completely agree with Todd that, especially in, Texas, places like that, they take pride in, hey, these are our customers. We love having that interaction with them. So I think I completely agree that the property manager should still be involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the real secret to automation in that space is exactly what Todd said, right? It's about trusted flexibility, right? So that residents can or prospects can make the choices for the experience that they want to have, and you're not forcing them into your desired roadmap. But that automation has to be trusted, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if we talk specifically about leasing, but even broader picture, and I think Lee said it perfect before, let the automation right now focus on the little things. In the next 2 weeks, the industry is going to hear a ton of big claims. And honestly, from what we're seeing and what we're hearing, like the industry isn't foundationally ready yet for those large scale automation tasks. So grab the value today about automating the little things, right? And it's about the people, like Todd said, before coming into prop tech, I spent 10 years at Starbucks and got to work on a special projects implementation team there for lean and Toyota production system approach. And the whole intent of it was literally just allow employees to lift their heads up. And because you get so caught in the minutia and the small tasks and the small details that, to Todd's point, it's what prevents them from doing the uniquely human things that they're positioned to do
Mm-hmm.
around the leasing experience, right? Or around the resident experience. And so I think the value of the automation, is the time saved, a reduction in errors, but it has to be trustworthy, right? The system has to operate in the way that you want it to and uphold your brand standards and your brand guidelines. And I think on the little tasks and in the minutia of all of the resident and prospect touch points, um, automation can deliver huge value there,
Sure.
whether it's leasing or maintenance or access control or communications, right? Any of the verticals within the resident life cycle.
Yeah. Really quickly before we go, I want to touch on the last one, which is security, right? And I don't think anybody thinks that AI is going to replace, having someone on site that can actually, break up a fight, stop an intruder, all of that. But it can certainly monitor, the cameras. That's like a big piece. Lee, I'm going to look at you for this one because this is, firmly in your world, right? Like where does automation help pull some of that man hours off of the security?
Yeah, so my big thing with AI is it needs to be a better support agent. So be able to go into our system. If you want to create a credential, you can just type in, how do I create a credential? That AI shows that, right? But I think the more important piece that we're working on is within that camera system. So if you said, hey, I got 15 cameras that I want remotely monitored at 24 hours, that price tag was pretty substantial. Now, what's great with AI is it's removing all the outliers. So that's a dog, that person isn't loitering, those sorts of things. And what's happened is that's actually made that monitoring cheaper, because now it's essentially that last mile is being monitored by an actual human being. So we have gun detection. The gun, the AI is picking up the gun, then it goes to a monitoring center, then they confirm, yes, that's a gun, call authorities, call the property, whatever the process is, or no, it's not. And that's the same thing, loitering, any issues on site. So I think that's really where AI is going to take that, is lower that cost, and then kind of reduce the need for that on-site security at all times. Because that's the costly piece, right? And it's not even the cost, is sometimes just being able to find that labor force to be able to deliver that. So I think that's where AI is going to help us out substantially on securing these buildings.
Yeah, definitely a through line through all of this is, labor is getting harder to find, but AI is helping, reduce some of the labor needs. So it's really great. Well, this flew by. Thank you all for all of your questions that I think really helped drive this conversation in a really useful way. And yeah, if anybody would like to be connected to any of the panelists, I'm happy to do so. Send me an email. It's franco@propmoto.com. That's FRANCO @propmoto.com. Lee, David, Todd, thank you guys for joining.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Wonderful.
Appreciate it.